Okay, sorry about that. A little bit late. Actually, I was going to do this quite a bit earlier, but I had some admin stuff to do in the Great Bay community, and I was waiting for Kano to go to work, so she has something to listen to when she's at work. So, hi, Kano. I'm sure you're probably working and listening at the same time. So, anyways, this is kind of going to be a weird, I think, stream for the most part. There's just a couple things I want to touch on, and like I said, I was just going to kind of do it this morning. I had to do. Well, I still have to do it. I've written the script, but I have to record something for reasons to believe that they've asked me to. So I've written the script, and so I was going to record that, but I figured I might stream for a few minutes prior to doing that. I hear noises. And kind of get you guys' input on a few things. So I just made some coffee. It is piping hot, so hang on. And So here, the couple things I wanted to touch on, last night, there's a couple things that came to my attention. One of which had to do with concealed weapons permit, and the other thing had to do with Jenna Belk, if you know who Jenna is. Both of which I think are topics I kind of wanted to discuss a little bit. I think there's something to them that there's a dialogue to be had, to say the least. People know that I am an avid Second Amendment rights person. I believe that people have the right to bear arms. The Supreme Court, time after time again, has, reiterated that the average citizen, if you're over, a certain age, 21 for most states, 21 for handguns, 18 for rifles, that you are allowed to carry weapons. I'm a firm believer in that. I do. I think that people have guns for various reasons. Some of them have for hunting. Some of them have for protection. People know that I had a concealed weapons permit up in Washington for quite some time. I carried a Browning Buckmark, and I had a Derringer, I had a Jennings, I had a shotgun, I had a .22 rifle. I mean, so I had my share of firearms. But I also went through firearm safety courses. I also had training in the military. We had to qualify in 9 millimeters and rifle training. So this particular thing to me was so egregious when I read this. So I kind of want to get your guys' opinion on it too. Welcome everybody out there. Got some Twitch Punisher, got some Heat Shield, got some Justin Franks. How come Justin's not a mod? I don't know. Hey Justin, you want to be a mod? Let me know. I'm having new mods, obviously, because reasons, but not to get into that. But anyways, so I saw this last night, and it really kind of struck me because seems so odd to me. And then I'll get into the Jenna Belk thing, which is, I would say, not of equal importance as this, but I mean, of interest to me, who I was talking to last night. Okay, so the title of this is What You Need to Know About Ohio's Constitutional Carry Law. And it says, with DeWine's signature, Ohio became the third state to pass a permit optional concealed carry law. The newly signed law makes concealed weapons permit optional for anyone legally allowed to carry a gun, goes into effect June 12th. This law also eliminates required training and the requirements that individuals, quote, promptly notify police officers that they are carrying concealed weapons. Man, I've got some major issues with this. Now, first of all, I definitely believe that anybody who owns a firearm, handles a firearm, or shoots a firearm should understand safety procedures when it comes to a firearm. They should know how to break down a weapon. They should know how to load the bullets. They should know how to clean the weapon, check the chamber for a bullet, and clear the weapon and things of that nature. These are things that are just kind of standard to anybody who's ever owned a weapon, right? So this kind of says, hey, look, if you're old enough to own a firearm, you can carry now. I'm not sure that I have a huge issue with that per se. Other states have had, like Texas, have had open carry for quite some time. You don't need a CWP for it. You just carry it on your hip. It has to be exposed at all times. And it's not considered to be concealed carry. Concealed carry typically requires a very special permit. And it's just something you carry in your wallet. I know I was only asked for mine a couple times, but I had been pulled over before in Washington, and one of the things you have to let them know, the officers, hey, by the way, I am a licensed, registered, carrier. I have a CWP, blah blah, and I've never had an issue, but personally, most of the time, they're all cool with that, right? You tell an officer you have a CWP, they're not really that concerned, from what I understand, as opposed to people that don't tell them they have a weapon. Those are the ones that usually have a problem with. But you say, look, I'm a licensed carrier. Then they know you probably have some kind of training. They know that you understand that you are obligated to kind of tell them and make sure that their safety is paramount. So this law seems to one, not to get rid of that requirement to have the CWP, but moreover, it gets rid of the requirement to have training. Now, I don't understand that. I really don't understand that. Now, I happen to be a store manager for Radio Shack up in St. George, Utah. And one of the assistant manager that I had was a sheriff off-duty assistant deputy sheriff. And so I was really good friends with him. And we would go to the sheriff's range and we would go firing, his weapons and my weapons. And he had, I think it was a Glock. What do you have, a Glock 17 with a scope, like a laser scope? He had some really nice firearms. But we went to go have training. Now there's something in the live chat says that you're not wanting something that doesn't matter. You don't get to dictate people's rights. That's not a right. There's no right whatsoever. By the way, it's a liberty, not a right. But there's no right to have a firearm without training. That's not constitutional. The Supreme Court never said that. Now, states could be, determine what they want, but there's no liberty to carry a firearm without training. There's just nothing on the books that says, one way or the other. It's up to the state. But there's some fundamental aspects of this that I think just shock the conscience to anybody. You have somebody who is wielding a weapon that has not demonstrated a proficiency to wield that weapon, to operate that weapon, to fire that weapon, to draw that weapon, to carry that weapon. This is undoubtedly going to cause problems in the state. There are going to be more accidental shootings, either self-inflicted gunshot wounds or innocent bystanders being shot. So I think it's a safety thing. When we're talking about, society, we're talking about safety. These things are ubiquitous in all states that have firearms. There are certain things that you have to understand when wielding that weapon. Very quickly, the 5 very basic safety things. You always treat that gun as if it is loaded every single time. You never assume a gun is unloaded. Matter of fact, Alex Baldwin found out the hard way, right? On the setting of Rust. He accidentally shot 2 people. One of them died. And we will be hopefully talking about that on Non Sequitur next month. Hopefully, I got a person who wants to come in and discuss that. But he failed to recognize that very basic rule that you always treat that gun if it's loaded. Especially, again, I still don't understand the whole Rust thing. I've read about it and I understand how it happened, but I don't understand how it happened, if that makes any sense. That weapon should have never been able to fire something that was capable of firing a live round. I don't know. Matter of fact, I think now they're trying to get it so most firearms on set are not something that even has a firing pin or something that is capable of igniting a primer. It is basically a stock gun, just a rubber gun or whatever. Something that looks very, very similar to a real weapon, but has no actual mechanical parts, which I think is much safer, obviously. You can no way you can be accidentally shot from one of those, right? Yeah, and Justin said, many other states already have similar constitutional carry laws. This is not the first thing, but in those states, they do, from what I understand, they do have higher accidental discharges. And you are responsible for what you do your gun, obviously, but at the same token, you have to have an obligation to society to abide by these gun safety rules, right? And so, you always treat the gun as safety. You always point it in a safe direction, especially when you're cleaning the weapon, right? You never point it indiscriminately. You always got to know, where you're firing. You always want to make sure that you have the finger off the trigger until you're ready to pull it. That's another thing I see a lot of times watching these TV shows. They go in with a weapon and they go in fingers on the trigger, which they're not trained to do. They're trained to put the finger on the outside of the guard, and so they don't have any accidental discharge, because a lot of those weapons, they are very sensitive. You don't have to pull a trigger very hard on a lot of weapons. Unless if you don't have a cocked revolver, and then you have to pull the trigger all the way to have move back. Yeah, it takes a little more pressure. But if it's a hairpin trigger and you've already got it cocked, it doesn't take that much, right? There's so many. Yes, Twitch points out there's so many failures in the Rust thing. It's hard to even imagine how many things had to go wrong for that to happen. But again, we'll be hopefully talking about that with some certain people. Some states do require the live fire during safety courses. Yeah, and I think they should have live fire. I do. I think they should be trained live fire. And always, again, you maintain the gun separate from the bullet, so you have to keep it unloaded. And the main thing is you don't point at anything you don't want to kill. It's simple as that. If you don't want, hang on, this stupid thing, stupid thing he's playing for some reason, and I don't know why. I have it muted too, but it keeps coming back on. So, anyways, though, so that's kind of my particular take on this, is that I think these laws, and this is not the first state to do this, are very, very bad ideas. I think that safety has to be paramount, even though that, again, I think that these are fundamental liberties that people should have. I'm all for the Second Amendment, all for the First Amendment, all for all the amendments, I guess, right? 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6, 3, whatever. But yeah, I think that when you have this kind of over generalization of the ability to bear arms, there's going to be unnecessary sacrifices, unnecessary damage, unnecessary death. When all you have to do is go take a firearm safety course. All you have to do is just go prove you're proficient with the weapon. I don't understand why that's a big deal. I don't know why anybody would be against that. Matter of fact, again, it doesn't infringe upon your rights to bear arms to show that you have, an understanding of how to shoot a gun. I mean, this doesn't infringe upon your rights. It's just like driving your car. You have to show that you can know how to drive a car. Driving a car is not a fundamental right or liberty. These things are actually liberties, not rights. But there's nothing in the Constitution that says, you must be able to drive. You don't have to show a proficiency to driving. Same thing with a firearm. There's nothing in the government that says you have to have a firearm or that you have to not show anything. It's, again, state by state. And I don't mind it being state by state. I don't. But again, I think these states need to have a little more, I hate the word restriction. It's not the word restriction, but more understanding that having a weapon comes with certain responsibilities, right? And one of those responsibilities, I think, are firearm safety, right? So, and matter of fact, like in Texas, Texas has open carry for a long time. Right. But I can probably guarantee most of those people in Texas know how to fire that weapon. I can't imagine anybody in Texas who has a firearm that has never fired one. If you live in Texas and you own a gun and you've never fired it, I want to hear from you. I want to know why. Because I can't imagine anybody in Texas having an open carry firearm on their hip and haven't fired that weapon. That just seems really, really odd to me. So what are you guys' takes on that? Yeah, right to keep and bear arms, sure, but again, there's some limitations that come with that, right? These are not free-for-alls, right? I mean, if a state says, hey, look, you have to have a CWP, then you have to abide by that state. California, you have to have a CWP, right? California doesn't have anything like this. So it is state by state. Nothing is being infringed by California saying, hey, you need a CWP to have a weapon, Yeah, Texas was concealed. It wasn't very long ago. They changed over to open carry, right? I'm not conflating firearms to cars. These are exactly the same things. Driving is a privilege. You have to have a demonstration that you know how to drive that vehicle for safety considerations. That's exactly the same thing for firearms. They're not a right. They're a liberty. A right is something to deal with. It's something that government can take away, or discriminate against mostly. For example, a right to have equal opportunity for jobs, non-discrimination, gender, sex, things of that nature. Those are rights. Liberties are for the ability to have speech, the ability to carry a gun. Those are actually called liberties. They call them the Bill of Rights, and people refer to them as rights, but they actually are liberties. But the principle is the same. It is the ability to demonstrate a proficiency for safety, and that's, again, I don't think that's restrictive. I think that's just common sense. How much really does it take to say, look, I want to be able to show that I have a proficiency with this gun? Now, again, I don't think they should price it too high, right? I think there's something to be said by saying, oh, look, people can't afford to have these training courses, and I get that. Maybe they can have, a free thing. You go down to the gun range and you say, look, I'd like to qualify with this. I'd like to have a instructor that's proficient in this weapon. Check me off that I am certified to do this, and then get my CWP, no cost to them, or minuscule cost, $10, $15. Something that most people can afford pretty easily. but something along the lines that says, look, this person has demonstrated some proficiency with this weapon. And I understand there's a lot of controversy, again, with guns. I get that. I really do. So Jim Joel says, I have a gun for safety. It never leaves home. I have never fired that particular gun, and I've been to a range once. I'm here in Texas and I don't carry a license. Yeah, and in fact, I was thinking about you just a few minutes ago. Not for that. Stop it, people. You're all sick. No, but I was just thinking about you on that too, because I knew you had a gun, but you have been to a range. You fired other weapons, so you haven't fired the gun that you particularly have, but I know you've actually fired other weapons. But do you agree, Jules, that even in Texas, no matter what weapon you have, you at least should probably know what it's like to fire a weapon? Because here's the thing too, it's also a safety for the individual carrying the gun. Firing of a weapon can be a very startling experience, and each one has a different amount of recoil, each one has a different amount of sound, each one has a different feel. I have fired many different weapons in my life, but if you don't know what to expect, especially in a situation where you would actually have to use that weapon for protection, that could be harmful as well. That could be dangerous, right? Because you know, if you don't know what to expect for the kickback. I mean, if you're somebody that thinks you're going to be able to fire a .357 Magnum and you weigh 100 pounds and you're not going to get some recoil out of that, you're delusional, right? You don't want that kind of weapon. You need a kind of weapon that's going to be conducive to what you're using it for: self-defense, minimal profile, be able to be concealed, whatever it is. There are going to be restrictions. Certain people can fire at certain guns easier, right? I mean, this is just, a fact of life. So you need to know what's kind of to expect. I mean, I remember the first time I fired a shotgun. I was like, holy crap. I was like that. I was propped up too. I was like, just boom. I was like, that's fun. And I actually enjoyed skeet shooting, by the way. People don't know that about me. I used to enjoy skeet shooting, and I got pretty decent at skeet shooting. That was fun, but I didn't like to hunt. I think I told people a long time ago, the first and only time I ever shot something living, it was a bird, and I was in my mid to late teens, and I felt bad. I felt really bad. I was like, I don't like this. I really don't. And so I'm not a hunter. Now, I'm not against hunting, and I understand hunting is often used for. I'm gonna put this thing out so it's come again. Then I'll talk about Jenna's thing. But I didn't like it. And so I understand why people do hunt. I really think that it's perfectly fine for thinning out herds and people that want to, especially eat the meat. I'm absolutely fine with that. I don't really find hunting for sport to... I can't say that I can't condone it because it's legal, but I don't have an affinity for trophy hunting or hunting for sport. I just don't. And the illegal poaching, absolutely no possible way. Those people should be treated, like just be taken out of society, put in jail forever. That's, to me, it's just so reprehensible when you have people breaking the law to hunt. But I'm not trying to condemn hunters. It's just something that I just particularly don't prefer. But I like to fish. Yeah, so let me know what you guys think of that. I mean, again, leave me a comment in the comment section. If you own a gun, if you've never fired a gun, and what you think as far as like people being able to own these weapons without any kind of training whatsoever. Jim Show said the recoil is much more intense than you expect. You need to know how to brace and control. Absolutely. Yeah, no. Seriously, that really is the case, right? Especially, and I hate to say it, females, because generally, they're not as strong as men per se. And they have, when they fire a weapon, they need to know what that weapon's recoil is like, because again, they're not going to have a heavier caliber bullet. If they have something like a 9mm or a 22 or something like a small Jennings or Derringer, yeah, there's not going to be that much as compared to like if they have a 45 or a 357. These things are going to be much more kick to them. Can I ask Jules, can I ask what caliber you have? If I'm I'm just curious. The one that you own now and the one that you shot. In fact, if you own a gun, put 1 in the live chat. If you don't own a gun, press 2. So, I mean, I don't own a gun now, but obviously I used to. I just, they've gone by the wayside over the years. sold a couple, lost one. Let's see here. Another one got stolen. It's still on file too. By the way, if you lose your weapon, make sure that you report it as stolen. Yeah, no, and I know people, you know, use them to kill animals and things of that nature, and I get that, especially on a ranch and hunting and things of that nature. Look, I'm not against any of that. It's just that for me, particularly myself, I'm just not a fan of it. I don't get anything out of killing an animal just for sport. Now, if I'm going to eat it, that's a different story, right? I happen to like venison, elk, any of that stuff. I will definitely eat it. I'm not a vegetarian or a vegan, so I am a carnivore or omnivore. But I'm not going to do it myself. I just not my thing. And I will fish. I love to fish, and I will gut that damn thing, and I'll eat it on this. You know, I'll fry that thing up with garlic and butter, and you know, I have crawdaddies and all that kind of stuff. I mean, but I cook that stuff really, really good because of parasites. If you fish and you've got crawdaddies, or you got freshwater or even saltwater fish, you got to make sure that you cook it properly, especially if it's fresh, because it's almost guaranteed there's going to be parasites in there. So you've got to get it to a high temperature. You got to make sure that every bit of that meat is cooked. And you know, when you cook something well, then it's going to kill all that stuff, right? So Converse Contender says, "Oh, I'm definitely big on training people. I learned a lot, though. I thought I knew in my CWP class. Yeah, I can imagine that, right? A lot of people don't realize there is a lot to learn about firearms, as far as like understanding, you know, how that even work, right? I mean, you know, you have to know whether it's a single shot, if it's going to be a semi-automatic, an automatic. There's a lot of different things about knowledge of a weapon. And by the way, I am not that knowledgeable on weapons. I have a very superficial understanding, but enough to at least, you know, be safe when I carried a weapon. I never pointed at anyone. I never had to draw any of my weapons ever. When I kept my weapons, you know, at home or something like that, it was always stored. The bullets were always, you know, in a mag somewhere else. Matter of fact, I got pulled over going into base one time, and they actually had found, was it a bullet or mag? They found something in my car, and I was like, shit, did I leave my weapon, you know, off base? Did I try to bring the weapon on base? And they didn't find anything else, but I got a verbal thing like, hey, just don't do that. Make sure that you have everything out of your car. They knew I carried, and you know, in the military it is maybe a little easier to get a CWP, but you can't bring your weapon on base. You got to take it to the armory. And back then it probably would have just been, you know, maybe captain's mast, maybe it probably even body then would have probably nowhere near would have been bad. Now you try getting a weapon on a base now, even accidentally, it's gonna be bad jujus. Justice says, I have a large arsenal by New Jersey standards, but it's really pretty pitiful collection. A 22 pistol, 9mm, and a 45 ACP pistol, a pump shotgun, and AR. Yeah, that's not bad. I mean, you pretty much got the gambit right there, right? I mean, so, and I'm not against ARs either. You know, I think people, you know, are responsible for if they have an AR-15 or something like that. Or MP5 would be a pretty cool weapon to have. Or it was MP4? MP4. Yeah. Is that what it is? Yeah. No, MP5. Yeah, MP5. Let's see here. Biggest thing I learned in mine was don't be a hero and stay out of others' business at all costs. Only draw for you and your family safety. And most part, yeah, I mean, I think everything's situational, right? But I mean, when you're pulling that weapon, though, you better be prepared to use it. You better be prepared to suffer the consequences. And so it is one of those last resort types of situations. And like I said, I never had to pull my weapon, so I've never been in that situation where I was even threatened to do such a thing. But that's the mindset, right? You can't have people have the mindset where, oh, I'm going to solve everything by drawing a weapon, because those are the people that should not be carrying weapons of any kind. So. All right, so moving on to the next topic here. So Jenna Belk, I've known Jenna for quite some time, actually. I don't know if she really remembers too much about me, but we've had our discussions, and I gotta tell you, she's always, or I guess Jenna's trans now, and I asked Jenna what pronouns that I'm just gonna say Jenna because I don't want to misgender her. I don't know if she goes by she or he or what. I don't know. I really don't. Jenna didn't get back to me, so I'm just gonna say Jenna so I don't misgender. But Jenna has always been civil to me, always been nice. We've had some really good conversations. And Jenna was, pretty active with the ACA, and recently with the ACA, there's been some members that have had issues with Matt Dillahunty and some of the things in the ACA. Remember Autumn? Notes from Autumn? Major issues. I know, Eric Murphy issues there, and V issues there. A few people, a matter of fact, Jen Peoples issues, Tracy Harris issues. As a matter of fact, I was talking to Jen Peoples on this thread just last night. And it's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this today is because I was talking to Jen Peoples and Jenna last night. And even though I don't know a lot of the details, and I don't have to be privy to them, it's not really my business, right? But my thing is that there's this notable thing with Matt that people have started to realize now that I've known for a very long time. And I hate going personal with Matt. I really do. I just find Matt to be so egotistical and arrogant that he's just not somebody that should be reflecting the face of atheism. I happen to like the old Atheist Experience. The original, remember, it was taped as a cable show before they went live and all this other stuff. And they had some pretty good episodes. I think they were a lot more interactive. I thought they really had good discussions. But as time grew on, as I pointed out to Jen, how many times can you say, I don't believe you? How many times can you say, prove you're God, right? I mean, it's just impossible to carry on for 10 years with that type of mentality. And over the last 4 or 5 years, they've had so many kerfluffles and splintering because they have factionalization of the community. Because, of course, I'm sorry, you cannot base a community on what they just consider to be, atheism, which is to them just non-belief, which again I think is ridiculous, but whatever. So they just have, yeah, we all just don't believe. Okay, great, but that's not really a community. Other communities, other atheist communities, at least have a lot of activism with secularism and things of that nature, but they promote secularism. They don't really promote atheism, because I don't think the ACA ever really promoted atheism. I really don't. I never really saw them promote atheism, except for maybe at the very beginning. What they promote is, well, one, non-belief, but they mostly promote just trying to get the theists to try to, argue with them that God exists, and they just say, well, we don't believe you. There are very little counter arguments as far as the higher echelons of the theists that most of them don't call. Matter of fact, they did some major changes as the show progressed, where they would more eliminate any of the atheist callers, and they just got the theist callers. And so atheists would actually pretend to be theists. You would get posed, and then you had this low caliber theist that would call the Darth Dawkins of the world, the Saitan clones, right? And so the show just isn't interesting any longer. I haven't watched an episode in ages. I've watched some clips that people have sent me and say, Steve, there's this clip of the Atheist Experience you might want to check out, and I'll do a review on it. But as far as the show, I can't even tell you the last time I watched an Atheist Experience show. Pipeline Audio says ACA isn't about atheism, about groupthink. Oh, I agree with that. No, I absolutely do. I think the ACA is a very group-like organization. I again used to know a lot of the more internal workings with people that were involved directly with the ACA. Even my ex-business partner Kyle was involved with the ACA. He was there, and there's other people on the show that I have absolutely nothing to do with, nor will ever have anything to do with. But it is about groupthink. It is like, oh, if you suck up to Matt, you'll get promoted, right? And he's promoted people that I helped get started. He's promoted people that I can't stand, that I think are the most morally reprehensible people on the planet. But Matt promotes them. Okay, perfectly fine to do that. But why? Because they kissed his ass, right? And I don't kiss Matt's ass. Matter of fact, Matt is well aware of my arguments. He's never addressed them, never will address them. Why he can't address them? People have told him, hey, Steve's arguments are pretty good. You're going to have to bring your A game if you think you're going to assail his arguments, because they're valid and they're sound. If he thinks they're not sound, he's going to have to tell me, where do they fail? What premise is not true? Now, again, these are not arguments for or against God. These are arguments for, relating to special pleading arguments and semantic collapse arguments. But again, there's a lot involved in my atheist semantic collapse argument. I just have the general short form on my blog, but the fuller version that argues against Blue's presumption of atheism that he wrote in 1972, a lot more intricate. And so he wouldn't have the ability to actually even assail that, I don't think. And people that have read the paper have told him it's good. So what his shtick is basically just telling the theist, you're wrong. I don't believe you. You haven't convinced me. Well, I'm like, well, who gives a crap if they convince you or not, man? That's a waste of time. I can't convince you that I'm right, and I have logic. I have objective things that you can go look at and say, oh, yeah, this is a logical argument that's valid and sound. I can't convince him. So you think somebody's going to be able to call up and convince him that God exists? Come on. Of course it's not going to happen. It's for entertainment, right? The show's for entertainment. At least when I have atheological a-holes and people call in whether they're theist or atheist, it's talk about stuff. They're not trying to convince me God exists or God does not exist, because that's not going to happen over a call. Right? I make no bones about that, so I want to have the discussions. I want to have the topics. That's a huge difference to be had there. So anyways, she wrote this. And again, I hope I do this justice. I did message Jenna on her thread that I was going to be doing this review, and hopefully she doesn't mind. It's a public page, so it's nothing private, right? So it's actually a public page. So it is something that should be discussed. And she says, I think I can tell I'm finally beginning to break away from the abusive mindset, as I'm feeling less and less obligated to be considerate to the Matt Dillahunties of the world. And that's a hell of a statement. I mean, I know she was very supportive of the ACA and of Matt for quite some time. Pipeline says, Knowles Plum, the Dillahunty experience was 9 years ago. That issue is still there. Yeah, no, you're right. And by the way, I'm a huge fan of Noel Plum. Huge fan of Noel Plum. He is well aware of that. And we go way back. I've known Noel for quite some time. We get along really well, actually. And we agree on almost like 90% of stuff. But you're right. That video that he made with Matt was a very, very long time ago. And it's just gotten worse. Because Matt is all about ego. He's all about being smug, as he put it. And then he was like trying to tell Jim from the Atheist Edge that I was smug too. And he's like, let's be smug together. I'm like, dude, I'm not smug. I'm not even arrogant. What I am is informed. And I have my opinions, and I will argue my opinions. And I'll do it with respect. I'll do it with logic. I'll do it with reason. I'll do it with citations. He has none of those. He doesn't use reason. He doesn't use logic. And he certainly doesn't use citations. And so he takes that as being smug. It's not smug. Look, if I tell you that A equals A and you tell me it's wrong, I'm not smug by telling you you're just objectively wrong. There's a fact of the matter to be had there. You're just objectively wrong. If I say I like, pepperoni pizza and you say you like pineapple, there's no objective fact of the matter to be had there, right? We can still discuss it. We can debate it. We can talk about it. But there's no object there to say this is the case one way or another, because it's a very subjective claim. But Matt doesn't seem to want to even grasp objective claims, right? I mean, literally, there are some logic out there that I've used that he just won't touch. Aaron's the same way. And I happen to like Aaron. I still like Aaron. I even know we've had a lot of issues, and he probably hates me. I just don't feel that way with Aaron. I happen to think he's a pretty cool dude. I wish things could have been different, but whatever. But his logic sucks. What am I going to do? I mean, he blocked me because he was trying to tell me something was a double negative when it wasn't. And even people that knew logic was trying to tell him, dude, this is not a double negative. Stop saying it's a double negative. Steve's right on this. But he just could not recognize the objective fact of the matter. And I think when it comes to Matt, it's the same way. He doesn't recognize the objective facts of the matter because he's so used to having this format where he's just telling the person, I don't believe you. You haven't convinced me. So what? Look, again, I'll say this for the millionth time. Saying you don't believe and then justifying it because you're not convinced or you haven't seen evidence is not justification. It's a tautology. It's not telling you. It's like saying I'm not married because I'm a bachelor, or I'm a bachelor because I'm not married. It doesn't tell you anything new, right? Because being a bachelor implies that you're not married. There's an analytical thing there, right? It's right. So there's an analytical distinction that if you're a bachelor, you are unmarried. So if I say I'm unmarried, I'm a bachelor because I'm unmarried, that doesn't tell anybody anything about why you ain't married, right? So it's the same thing with atheism. It doesn't tell anybody when you say, I don't believe because I haven't been convinced, or I don't believe because there's insufficient evidence. That doesn't tell anybody why you believe or you don't believe. I mean, maybe the insufficient evidence is a little bit more giving, but to say I don't believe because I'm not convinced, that's a tautology. And so I don't even like there's like no evidence thing, because that's a claim in itself. When an atheist says there's no evidence, that is a claim that needs to be justified. I think they're better off saying the evidence weighing against the existence of God to me is greater than the evidence that God does exist. And let me explain why. That's a full justification. right? Any atheist says, look, there are no gods. And the reason why there are no gods is the evidence is more against God existing or God's existing than God's not existing. And then give reasons. Say, look, here's all the arguments against God, and probabilistic speaking, those are stronger than the other ones. Arguing from naturalism is stronger than arguing from supernaturalism. Arguing through theoretical virtues is stronger than arguing from non-theoretical virtues. There's arguments to be had that can seriously justify any atheist going, yeah, there's no gods. So that's it. It's so much better to tell the theist why you don't believe than to say, well, I just don't believe you because you didn't convince me. That's stupid. That's no justification. And again, most atheists, I particularly think most atheists probably do believe there are no gods, but they're afraid to even admit that. They're afraid they've been so convinced by the Matt Dillahunties of the world that because that comes with a burden of proof, that they shouldn't have that. And that's just nonsense. You want that burden of proof. Even as non-belief, it has a burden of proof. And this goes back in the literature for epistemology way back. Michael Martin, who was a huge advocate of negative atheism, still said negative atheism, which is non-belief, still needs to be justified. And he's absolutely right on that. So even non-belief has a burden of justification, but it's much lower than saying there are no gods. But still, that burden to say there's no gods can be easily met. But Matt Dillahunty has convinced people, oh, you don't want to have that burden. Why not? Why not? Tell that theist what you think, and then argue for it. Doesn't mean you have to prove it. Doesn't mean you have to demonstrate there's no gods. Absolutely not. So, all right. So moving down here a little bit. People ask for more clarification. Again, I personally, I really don't care what the details are. I mean, I do and I don't. I like to know only because, maybe it can help other people. If Jenna has had some bad experiences, it can help other people. Because, again, I don't want to miss Jenna. I'm just going to say Jenna. Jenna was very close to Matt. And so if Jenna's having problems, maybe other people experience the same things. Now, I kind of glean that it has to do along the lines of bigotry and sexism and other things. Personally, I don't have those experiences with Matt, right? I don't. I know that Matt currently is dating somebody who's trans, Arden Eden, who has been very civil to me. Arden has always been cool to me. I don't know if that's just Arden's nature, or she just feigns it. I don't know, but Arden has always been nice to me. So yeah, more power to them. I don't care who Matt goes out with and dates. If he's happy, she's happy, whatever. They're both over 18. I don't care. People are like, oh, there's a power difference there. There's an age discrepancy there. Not my thing. I don't care. But, there's some other accusations of sexism and things of that nature. And I don't know. I personally have never experienced that with Matt. So I can't say one way for another. I just cannot weigh in on that, right? I'm not privy to that stuff because he's never been sexist to me. So maybe he has to Jenna, maybe he has to other people, because it seems to be a common thing that at least he doesn't listen to their concerns, I guess. I don't know. Matt fans are saying you're going to be straw manning. He doesn't talk about this stuff anymore. I don't know. No, I can't. I'm not straw manning anything, right? Because I'm not arguing anything. The only way you can commit a straw man is if you argue something, and if you argue something that the person is not arguing themselves, right? If you make an effigy of what they're arguing that you can tear down easier, then that's a straw man. But I'm not making any arguments here. The only argument I was making for gun control, but as far as like the Jenna situation, I'm not making any arguments. So there's really, at least not yet. So there is nothing to be had as far as straw manning. But yeah, Matt has his fans that throw these terminologies around, right? The Matt fans of the world, the new atheism TM, some people call them the debate me bros, kind of stuff. They're very low level atheists. These are people that are not well read in atheism by any stretch of imagination. They argue by meme. They argue by ad baculum and ad hominem and all these other different type fallacies, and they just don't understand anything about the philosophy. They just don't. They don't care to. To them, atheism is just lack of belief. That's all there is to it. Have a nice day. Okay, great. You've now recused yourself from 99% of the entire dialogues for the other people that want to have the more mature discussions. So don't bother me. If that's all you want to learn about atheism, great. Go with God that may or may not exist. I don't care. I just don't care. But don't tell me how I'm supposed to use a word. Don't tell me what I am. Don't label me. I go out of my way not to label other people. I don't want to misgender people. Don't do it to me. Show me the same respect I'm showing them. If they want to call themselves atheists when they're actually promoting an agnostic position, Knock yourself out. I don't care. I just don't. Just don't tell me about philosophy when you have never read a single solitary paper on the topic, right? So people have been asking Jenna what the deal is. And there's some interesting comments in here. Like somebody says, Matt is a little over. Again, this is all public, so this is not like a private group or anything like that. This is Jenna's Facebook page, so this is why it's open for public criticism and scrutiny, just like mine is. Right? I have a public page. Go talk about it on YouTube. I don't care. You know. I think it's funny when people go stalk my page like it's some big deal. Oh my God, Steve has pictures of women. Yeah, I have like 10 ex-girlfriends literally on my Facebook. Yeah, I have their pictures, and most of them I still talk to. Many of them I still talk to this day. So it's like they're not random people on my Facebook. I still talk to almost, I would say, the vast majority of the photos on my Facebook. I still talk to those people. I lived here 20 years. I mean, I moved away, but I moved back. But they're like, Matt is a little overwhelming, and I prefer it when there's more patient host on the show. But I'm wondering about the specifics of this, and I think that's a good comment. Matt tends to be overbearing in the shows. I noticed when I did have a clip that somebody asked me to review, Matt was always over talking the other host. Never let the other person really get an word in edgewise. Doesn't matter who asked the question to whom, Matt always seemed to be the one answering. And it was the same diatribe, same rhetoric, I've heard for 10 years. He does, and when he does get a caller that knows what they're talking about, and I've seen this happen because I know who some of these people are, he doesn't know how to handle it, and he just kind of gets upset and hangs up. And I'm like, but the caller was right. You didn't even address what the caller was saying. You just shut him down. You just shut down the dialogue. That's just bogus. Again, on my program, the Theological A-holes, if a theist or atheist calls in and I don't understand their argument, I just want to know the argument better. I'd be like, okay, well, let's break it down, right? In fact, I'll tell you, I don't understand at all Mr. Intelligent Design's argument, right? One is it is incoherent. It is just nonsensical, to say the least, right? We all know that Mr. Intelligent Design arguments are bad. You know what? I won't even say they're bad. They have to actually get better to even to be bad. But they're entertaining because they're just so way out there. They're like the time cube stuff of the internet. They're the just, yeah, you got some good shrooms when you wrote this stuff kind of thing, right? And I think it's on the 28th, Monday, is it? I think it's Monday the 28th at what time? 3? 4? I don't remember. But we have Edgar coming on, Mr. Intelligent Design coming back, and he's going to go over in real time to explain to us his new and improved intelligent design theories. Yeah, the what is it called? I forget what he called it, but it's gold. It is gold. But yeah, so when people call on my show, yeah, let's talk about what you want to talk about. Let's give me your arguments. Either you want to argue God exists or God does not exist. You want to talk about philosophy, but Matt doesn't do any of that, because when he has people that do know what they're talking about, he just chides them and move on. And the upper echelons of the theists are not going to call the show. You don't see the Mike Wingers calling the show. You don't see the Inspiring Philosophies calling the show. You don't see Cameron Pertuzzi's calling the show. You don't see William Lane Craig calling the show, or the Joseph Rasmussen's calling the show, or Randolph Rouser calling the show. Randall Rouser. So you don't see any of these people calling the atheist experience. What you get is the Darth Dawkins clones, or Darth Dawkins himself. And of course, they're entertaining a little bit, to say, somewhat, but it doesn't really take any skill set to knock most of them down. Now, sure, some of them get, very highfalutin language. They get a lot of the jargon, a lot of the terminology. They use a lot of the theory-laden stuff, and they just go, oh, let's talk about Thomism and actualities and potentialities and presuppositions. I get that. And it is annoying. I'm not going to front. It is annoying. If you don't know the terminology, you're just listening to that going, yeah, whatever. But there's two kinds. There's the one kind of person that actually knows terminology and that will call and be sophistic about it, right? They're using sophistry because they know it's BS, but they just want to be able to call the show and mess with the host. I've seen this happen. There's a few people in the various communities that do that. The other kinds don't know what the hell they're talking about, right? And so it's kind of hard for some people to tell the difference between the people that know what they're talking about are just being sophistic and trolling, and the other ones who just pretend that they have a clue what's going on. It is quite difficult. IOPNC1 for $9 super chat says, do you understand time cube? No, is time cube, is that site still up? Time cube was like the weird thing on the internet. What was it? It's been like 2 decades, hasn't it been? It's been a long time ago. It's like when the internet started coming around. Even with the AOL intranet, when AOL gave you access to the internet, it wasn't actually true internet. It was an intranet to the internet gateway, and you're going through the AOL. But there's a page called Time Cube that would basically try to explain Earth and time in this weird fourth dimensional cube thing. It was just all nonsensical rantings. But it was popular because, people are like, yeah, this is some crazy stuff. Oh, it is still up. Okay. Interesting. Pipeline says, the best of all was when Dillahunty chickened out from the Darth Dawkins debate, and then all the cultists gathered around him and ran apologetics for Dillahunty. Does Edgar's new theory have eggs? Yes, it does, Tom. Yes, there are still eggs involved. It is Edgar. Yeah, it does. Again, I will never be able to understand any of this because it's nothing to be understandable. It's incoherent. It's non-intelligible. In fact, I remember when he was on, was it the Non Sequitur show or was it on my channel? I don't remember, but he was talking about statistics and going outside the realm of, like, your probabilities are 0 to 1, right? So your range is 0 to 1. And that's based upon, what's his name's axioms. The mathematician guy. Good grief. One of you math guys out there, remind me, who came up with the whole statistics between 0 and 1? Magagranoff? Magragoff? Whatever his name is. Starts with an M. It's Mag something or whatever. But anyways, it basically, you can either have 0, the range is 0 to 1, right? So your probability of 0, probability of 1. But he's like, oh no, you can have probability of like 2.33 or 3.2 or whatever. I'm like, how do you have a probability higher than 1? Because that's 100%. And he's like, oh, it's supernatural causation. And I'm like, I still don't know how that works. Yeah, you have 1.4 probability, 1.43 or something. It's like, well, how does that work? Oh, it's supernatural causation. No, it's not. It just makes no sense. So, yeah. So when something like that is so incoherent, where do you go on that? So, so a lot of people are like, again, this was last night. This was like going back last night. This is why I wanted to do this today, because I was like, oh, this is something that's worth talking about. Now, this name was interesting. Jen Aldrich was also a member of the ACA. From what I understand, Jen dislikes me intensely. I don't remember ever having a conversation with Jen, to be honest with you. I don't recall ever talking to Jen Aldrich. I know Jen. I know of Jen. But I just don't recall ever having a conversation with Jen. And I just think they were absolutely poisoned against me for whatever reason. They probably think I'm some kind of misogynistic, bigoted, homophobe, transphobe, whatever the word of the day is, right? Granting that I'm absolutely none of those, and I've been a longtime supporter of the LGBTQ plus community. Matter of fact, I left the religion because of gay rights. So I don't know why they would ever think that I have any of those attributes. They're just weapons, to be used, thrown around, these words. Oh, I don't like what you say as far as this. I'm going to accuse you of being that. And so I really don't know why Jen dislikes me. I don't care. But I understand Jen dislikes me. But Jen says, LOL, I deal with them. I deal with them with outright contempt at this point with zero apologies. Now, from what I understand, Jen became a polytheist. Jen left atheism to become polytheistic. And people gave her a lot of crap for that, especially in the atheist community. And I'm like, I don't care one way or another, right? People know I don't have a dog in the fight. I don't care if you're an atheist or theist, polytheist, whatever. I don't freaking care. I am absolutely an apatheist when it comes to any of that stuff online, because it's just your business, right? I've never tried to convince anybody there's a God. I've never tried to convince anybody there's not a God online. When I was a theist, obviously I did. But I mean, since I've been online, I have never tried to convince anybody one way or another. It's just not my shtick. I don't have a dog in that fight. If you want to be a polytheist, knock yourself out. And why atheists should care, I don't know. Atheists would be like, okay, well, that's your position. Let's talk about it, right? But yeah, Jen used to be a supporter of the ACA, a member on the board, if I'm not mistaken. I think wasn't Jen on the board of directors for the ACA at one time? But again, people are all kind of like wondering what's going on. And some people say like, let's see here. Let's go down a bit. Okay, so this person says, unfortunately, the atheist community has a significant problem with sexism, chauvinism, and worse. To some degree, yeah, but I think that a lot of communities have those problems, right? I mean, I don't involve myself with the ACA. I just think they're just not an organization I want to have anything to do with. They've had too many people involved with them that I find to be morally reprehensible. They've promoted, which I don't understand because they look past all their moral and turpitude problems. They look past the trolling that these people done, the harm they've done. They don't seem to care. It's a tribalistic thing. Okay, they're allowed to do that. But look what happened when Matt Dillahunty teams up with something like Jimmy Snow, and comes out later. Yeah, Steve was right. Jimmy Snow has issues. Jimmy Snow is not the benevolent, really cool dude that people think he is. Oflamio for $2 says polytheism is winning over atheists. Yeah, I've heard that, Oflamio. I've heard actually polytheism has a little bit of a resurgence going on. So does panentheism. Has a little bit of a resurgence going on. I don't know why. I'm not a polytheist, right? Polytheism just doesn't interest me. But for some reason, something has convinced them. Okay, there's a conversation to be had there. Let's talk about what convinced you and why. Those are the conversations I love having. I don't condemn somebody for being a polytheist. Why would I? I happen to know a lot of polytheists. I don't care. So, but they go on to say, I don't know a single female atheist who's stepped up a little bit who doesn't have a story about male atheist. So sorry to hear it. We're all better without these people. And again, might be something to that. I have noticed many women leaving the ACA under different, for different reasons, right? But they all seem to have a very similar thing about how they personally were treated by the ACA. And even when there was that first kerfluffle with Stephen Woodward, Stephen Woodford, Rationale Rules. But there's probably a dialogue to be had there, obviously, when that first started, but it was so worn down with just, terminologies of, oh, you're transphobic, you're this, you're that, rather than having a discussion. And a lot of it got shut down. And I think there was a schism there because people said, no, we do want to talk about this. But there's ways of talking about these topics that are not base level. There's ways to talk about these topics in an adult, intelligent way that addresses the concerns of all parties involved. I'm going to have that discussion on the Non Sequitur Show. I have a guest that I've already reached out to that is a longtime person I've known, has a PhD in biology, that is an advocate for these types of topics. And so we're going to be able to hopefully talk about it on a very intellectual level. But more so, not be shut down, not have people shut down the discussion, right? I even in my own group on the Great Debate community right now on Facebook, people trying to shut down topics. Now, again, I'm not saying they don't have legitimate concerns; they do, but you don't have to be so heavy-handed where you can say, "Hey, look, this can be marginally looked at as maybe transphobic or this is homophobic," but let's try to change the attitude of the person. Let's say, "Hey, look, this is maybe being construed wrong." Maybe try to approach a different way. See if people change, right? Because if you just shut them down, if you just stop the conversation, you just remove them, they're never going to change their positions, right? They're never going to grow and say, maybe there's a different way I can approach this. And we all do this, right? Look, when you're getting into these topics, there are landmines. We all know this. I've stepped on a few landmines. Don't think that I don't recognize that. I have stepped on landmines, and some people have willfully put those landmines in that way and said, "Hey, go with God." And see what happens. That may or may not exist. And so there are landmines in these particular topics because there are dishonest agents that use that to their advantage. But no, I'm not talking about Jen Peoples. Jen Peoples is later on. Jen Alrich is not Jen Peoples, completely different people. Yeah, Jen Alrich was involved with the organization, but that's not the same as Jen Peoples. So this person says, he comes across as arrogant and angry on the show. Make sure you guys can see this. Yeah. He says, he comes off as arrogant and angry on the show, and I can see the way he responds to theist callers as abusive. Is that what you're referring to in this and your pinned post, or does it go beyond that? And Jen replies, I'm saying that coming out of the Catholic shame and abuse I grew up in, everything was sunny and rosy. Everything less abusive, it seems, so I could identify abuse that I have gotten accustomed to. I think that's fair. I promise there's enough information in my pinned post and the comments through links and their own words If you don't see it, I take that to mean you may hold chauvinistic ideas. I hope you wouldn't take that to mean I think you're a bad person. It's hard not to think this way in society. I was along for the ride too. But if you really want to understand and you really want to put in the work, it may take to reverse some sexist ideas. It's the bear crossing the basketball court. Now, again, still a little cryptic, right? I don't know what it refers to specifically. Obviously, there's been things that have gone on between Jenna and Matt Dillahunty, or the organization, both, I would assume, that has given Jen this feeling that, hey, look, I've been through this before. I experienced this when I was with religion. I was experiencing this with the Catholic Church, trying to, I don't know, put them down or have this, more of a patriarchal approach, I guess, and have sexism and things of that nature and be chauvinistic. Yeah, that's probably true. I think the atheist community has probably an issue with that. Matter of fact, they've oscillated between atheism plus and atheism 2.0 to, one extreme to the other. They've got a whole mix, because again, it's a very non-cohesive. I don't say incohesive, but non-cohesive structure, because again, if all you have is that, yeah, we just don't believe in God, that's nothing really built upon that, right? If you say, look, there is no God, and we're going to convince theists there are no gods, and we're going to keep it out of the church separate from the state. We're going to make sure that creationism isn't taught in the schools, things of that nature. There's a lot more cohesion, because most atheists I've talked to are against teaching creationism in school, right? That's one thing that seems to be very common among atheists. Right? It's not something that atheists have to have. It's nothing, you can't assume that, hey, you're atheist, therefore you don't want creationism taught in school. You can't make that assumption. There's no implicature there, epistemic or even entailment. But there is something that seems to be a case of correlation that I would have to guess that probably most atheists do not want creationism taught in school. Right? But it's not categorical. It certainly can't be all. But I think that would be something that, again, I'm more interested in that aspect of atheism, right? I don't want creationism taught in school. So I'm an ally in that, right? Even though I'm not an atheist, I'm an ally in that. And I'm not theist either, for the new listeners out there. So they don't get too confused. I use atheism in the positive epistemic status terminology. But yeah, Jenna obviously has some issues with going on with the atheist community over there. Let's see here. And somebody brings up, I've heard about Dawkins and Krauss. Some issues there, obviously. But I think Dawkins is a grenade thrower. Dawkins are very much like Silverman. They are grenade throwing atheists. They're firebrand atheists, and they want that attention. They want that controversy. They want to be known as that person to say inflammatory things and get that attention. Do I think that's the best way to promote atheism? No, I do not. I think it's detrimental. I think it's harmful. You don't want to go out of your way to get attention merely by saying hyperbolic things. And now, again, I don't mind a little bit of grenade throwing every now and then, right? If you have something objective that you can show and you're just trying to make a point, absolutely fine with that. I do that all the time in Facebook groups, so I'm not going to front on that. But I'm not going to say something so hyperbolic to get my name recognized, the Matt Powells of the world, because they'll say something so egregious, that even Matt Dawkins will criticize them, right? Like, hey, there's this religious guy out there that thinks the government should kill gay people. Yeah, it's morally egregious. It shocks the senses. If somebody absolutely will go out there and say something like that, you're like, what the hell is wrong with this person? This person's sick, right? And so they know it'll get attention. But I see Dawkins doing the same thing to the other extreme, right? I think he says things that are very, really firebrand that he knows is going to get attention. Now, maybe not to that extreme. I mean, I'm not going to put them in the same category. I'm not trying to. They are disproportionate there. I'm not trying to say there's equivalence. But Dawkins, Richard Dawkins, not Dawson. And he says, I don't think I've recognized misogyny with Dillahunty. In fact, most of what I found when Googling for examples were from 8 to 10 years ago when he was being hailed as a feminist. And I remember that, although one of the sources was admittedly part of the Skeptic series that had previously featured David Silverman. Ouch. I haven't listened to The Atheist Experience in a couple of years, so maybe I would hear something different. I listened to again, however. And yeah, it's kind of funny because I remember when Matt went through that feminist stage. I don't think he identifies it as longer. He realized there were some issues there, especially on the was it the free thought blogs? I just went over this not too long ago, but the blogs that he went in, and people were telling him, hey, there's some problems on these blogs, and he went under a pseudonym, and they treated him so poorly. Even though he helped find the blogs and help promote the blogs. And he's like, hey, no, it actually is me. And they banned him for having a Zoc account. Yeah, no lie. What was that? Was that the free thought blogs? What was the name of the blogs? Again, somebody can remember. And I just went over this not too long ago. Again, my mind is going, I guess, on that stuff. I don't remember. But anyways, and I wrote, shocker, who knew? Oh, wait, I did about 9 hours ago, right? I was like, I knew. Just Steve was right. Matt has issues. He's all about his ego. He's not about the topics any longer. And again, I have nothing personal against Matt. I really don't. People think that I do. I don't. I think he doesn't care about the issues. I think he doesn't want to have intelligent dialogues any longer. I think he's just been so jaded that he hears the same things over and over and over again. He doesn't care. He just has lost all interest in having a conversation. Yeah, I was with Thunderfoot on the Free Thought blogs. Yeah. Thank you, Billy Bong. Yeah. And so, I kind of get that. I kind of get that he is jaded, but he's painted himself in a corner too. He's relegated himself to having these really irrational understandings of atheism, I think, because people don't want that stuff any longer. I think there's a resurgence a little bit with the atheists going, hey, we want more. The atheists are going, we don't want to just say to the theist we don't believe. We want to be able to explain to the theist why there is no God. And so they're looking to other avenues. They're going to places like Answers in Reason. They're going to people like Ben Watkins from Real Atheology. And they're saying, hey, give us some arguments against the existence of God. And they get them and they go, hey, that's pretty good. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think, you know what? I'm convinced there are no gods. And then they go out and they have better discussions with theists because they understand what the theist arguments are and how to assail those arguments, rather than just saying that I don't believe you. I don't believe you is not an argument. It's not an argument. So I think a lot of new atheists, newer atheists, right? Not the new atheist TM, but new atheists are no longer accepting of the old ways. They're no longer just wanting to go, hey, look, I don't believe the theist and I just lack a belief. They're not interested in it any longer. I think a lot of them, at least the ones that come around my channel, they're more interested in the bigger discussions, right? And the theists too. Theists watch this program all the time. They watch my channel. Why? Because they think they recognize there's a fair shake. They recognize that we're going to be talking about the topics. They can say, yeah, Steve doesn't believe in God, but Steve has his reasons and he's able to articulate them. He's able to discuss why he holds the positions that he holds. In fact, I saw Converse Contender out there earlier. I don't know if he still is, but he's a theist, and he knows I always give him a fair shake. And so I wrote this. I said, the Matt Dillahunties and Jimmy Snows of the world are not people to look to because they are active atheist activists, as they are all about their egos, not promoting atheism or even having productive dialogue with those who hold differing ideological beliefs. Neither deserve attention, admiration, or respect, nor do many involved in the ACA and rant. And I stand by that. The people that involve the ACA, the people that do any shows with Matt Dillahunty or Jimmy Snow, I really don't have much respect for any of them. I mean, there are a few people that are, they're okay, whatever, and I don't have any issues per se. But for the most part, the people that he has on, ones I have spoken out about before, that I've written blogs about and I've talked about for many, many, many years. They're sick people. They are disgusting, morally reprehensible people, and yet they're promoted by Matt Dillahunty. Again, Matt Dillahunty was the guy that said, oh, hey, good luck, Kyle Curtis. Your whole case with Steve is dependent upon your drunk ex-boyfriend that, oh, yeah, you beat him up. You date raped him, supposedly. And you got video. Steve's got video of you beating up your other boyfriend. But you know what? Well, this was after the fact. I admit that. But, he was still supportive of Kyle, right? He was still like, hey, Kyle, yeah, your ex-boyfriend's a drunk. He's just, clearly his word must be tainted. He must be lying. Come to find out, no, he wasn't lying. Come to find out, he was telling the truth. Come to find out that dishonest people that have been on the ACA going, oh, look, Steve knows that they're lying. Steve knows his witnesses are lying. That wasn't true. Yet the ACA still promotes these people. Because it's not about the topics. It is about who likes whom. It is about who you know, not what you know. And that's always been the case in those communities. I get that, right? And in fact, there was a video I watched not too long ago that was arguing most of things when it comes to people that make it on YouTube has nothing to do with talent as much as who you know, or just getting lucky. Because there's a lot of talented people I see on YouTube that are not that popular. You know, in fact, like I'll give you an example. I watched. I love these TikTok videos where what is her name? I think they call her over the top acting girl or something like that. I know her real name and I can't remember it, so forgive me. But she's an actress, and they have the bucket, right? And the bucket has the holes in, like a square hole and a round hole and an arch, and they're like, and the round peg goes in where? The round hole. And she's like, the round hole. And then he's like, you know, and the square peg goes in. She's like, the square hole. And he's like, the round hole. And she's like, and so she's feeling this, you know, like major angst stuff. It's brilliant acting, and there's a couple different TikToks on it, and I just laugh every time I see that, because I mean, the way she's so over the top is just brilliant to me. But she doesn't have a very popular channel. You know, I wanted to see if she had other videos, and come to find out her channel is like really small. And I'm like, really? These TikToks are amazing. They've got like, I don't know, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of views, I guess. But she has a very small YouTube channel. So I just thought that was kind of odd, because I think it's just so funny. She's like, you know, square hole, you know, square hole, round hole. It goes in the square hole. But people are agreeing with me, and I even pointed out that I wrote something to Jimmy Snow. I said Jimmy Snow basically got to start on my back on YouTube. I tried to warn people about how dishonest he was after I wrote an open letter to him August 15, 2019, after he ignored it, of course, which he did. He ignored it. Completely ignored it. Go figure. And I wrote, and I told Jenna, I said, hey, have you looked into other organizations? Like, I'm being interviewed to be on the advisory board for Atheists for Liberty, which is true. It is the atheist organization I have a lot of respect for. I've had Thomas on, Sheedy on my channel a few times. They want me to be on their advisory board, which is, you know, like I think 1 hour a week or something, whatever meeting. But it basically the kind of maybe redo their website as far as like what they have for agnosticism and atheism in a way to word it more inclusive. Not necessarily to word it by the philosophical understandings, but in a way that's a little more inclusive to both those who understand the philosophical understandings and the general colloquial, which I'm okay with. But I like the Atheists for Liberty because, you know, they're trying to do those things that I think are more important rather than just believing in God or not. They're trying to do things to keep, you know, religion out of school, separation of church and state, things of that nature, which I think, you know, are real world consequences of fundamentalism, especially radical fundamentalism, which I stand against. Over the top acting girl. You guys, somebody knows what I'm talking about, don't they? I don't remember her name. I just, like I said, I just went to her page the other day, and I guess I should. Okay. Dr. Stephen Wolfman isn't popular on YouTube. Yeah, that's kind of funny too, right? I haven't looked. I didn't know Stephen Wolfman had a page, but are you talking about Stephen Wolfman, like Wolfman Alpha? You know, he's a genius. So I was giving Jenna some recommendations of things of that nature. And then Ziggy says here, don't be dishonest. Your group is specifically targeting people who work to turn back human rights and society's safety nets. There's nothing progressive and everything regressive about that. What the hell are you talking about? I don't have a group like that. Because I guess I responded to him because I said about the Atheists for Liberties, independents, conservative, libertarians, and traditional liberals centrists. That's the thing for Atheist Liberty. If you go there, that's what it says right on the very. You know, it's for atheists, agnostics, free thinkers, non-religious, and skeptics, independents, conservatives, libertarians, traditional liberals, and centrists. I mean, it's pretty all-inclusive, right? And so I say, no thank you. They say, no thank you. A group comprised of regressive anti-humanist ideologies is an instant no-go for any compassionate person. What? That they don't care about whether you're gay, straight, trans, whatever. To them, it's a non-issue. They'll accept anybody. They don't want to make it about that stuff. How is that non-inclusive? and they're like, your group. It's not my group. I'm not affiliated with them yet, so they can't say it's my group. I said I'm being interviewed for a small little, very, very small, thing just to help them out with one specific thing. But and then they're like, why are you even trying to defend the First Amendment is first for a reason? Our founders, what? I haven't seen this yet. The First Amendment is there for a reason. Our founders understood that unfettered speech, including speech we hate or find hateful or triggering, was the key ingredient of a truly free citizenry. However, we've seen this concept eroded before our eyes in real time. Well, actually, I'm not a free speech absolutist. I do know people that are free speech absolutists, and I understand their arguments, and I'm not saying they have bad arguments. I'm just not quite there yet because, there are limitations like time, place, and manner, right? Even much of the atheist community, which used to pride itself on the steadfast free-thinking principles, have fallen victim to the poisonous emotional forces of intersectionality, social justice, and wokeness. Okay, I'm not disagreeing with that. For anyone who's not firmly on the progressive left, it has become difficult and even dangerous to speak your mind, and that's a problem. Why would you even think any decent person would want to be a part of a bigoted cishet white boy skeptic club? Oh, that's not inflammatory language, right? I mean, so how do you have you can't have a rational conversation with somebody like this, They recuse themselves from having a rational conversation, right? Because automatically, like, oh, bigoted cis, hes, white boys club, you're automatically bringing race, you're bringing in, things that are just laden to me, which I have nothing to do with that stuff. Yes, I happen to be cisgender. Yes, I happen to be a heterosexual white male, but you know what? That doesn't define me. It doesn't define me. I don't care whether you're cis, whether you're hetero, whether you're gay, whether you're straight, whether you're trans, whether you're black, you're white, purple. I don't give a flying crap about any of that stuff. Yet somebody will say, oh, look, Steve's saying he doesn't give a crap about the issues. No, what I'm saying is I don't care what you identify as, who you are, or anything. I think you should have a right to do any of that stuff. I just don't. I'm not going to go after you for any of that stuff. You want to say you're this, you're great. If I want to say I'm this and this, if I'm cis, you're not great. I don't care about those differences as far as the issues. I applaud the differences as far as a society. We need differences. We do not want to be this homogenized society. We don't want to be all the same. We don't want all to think the same. That's dangerous. But you cannot have a conversation with somebody who just starts off by throwing hyperbolic words out there. Oh, bigoted, cis, het, white. Those are non-productive conversations, right? And they're still talking to me. I haven't responded to them. I don't know. Are they talking to me? I don't know why they're spying to me. I didn't write this. America was designed not only to protect the individual to thrive, but also protect the individuals from government. Without liberty, America wouldn't exist. I didn't write that. So why are they quoting me that? Who the hell are they talking about? Oh, they're talking about Atheists for Liberty. Okay, I get it now. This was from Atheists for Liberty. And by the way, I agree with this. I absolutely agree with this. Yes, that's absolutely true. Right? And he's like, no, America was designed to protect cisgendered, heterosexual, laden white men from government and fuck everybody else. Yeah, whatever. You're done. This is somebody who I would never have a conversation with. Because they're not even bothering to talk about the topics. They're just automatically going, oh, look, it's protecting white males, whatever. I think you're at lunch. If there's a conversation to be had there, you've limited that conversation by throwing in these hyperbolic things. Because I guarantee it in that organization, there's gay, there's straight, there's white, there's black. So, and again, not my organization, so they couldn't even get that right. It's just an organization that I agree with their secularism, and then I want to help them get some of their philosophy stuff, a little more in line with the literature. But your organization cannot be honest about our country's founding. So why would any good conscience join us and need to believe that lie? Oh, okay, yeah. Again, I can't have a conversation with somebody like that. It's just non-conducive. And so, anyways, moving on from that, because it's just, and again, I was just giving a suggestion, right? So, is that Silverman, by the way? Because again, I get along with Silverman. I don't have a problem with Silverman. Silverman, I think, does some stupid things. Don't get me wrong. He's like Dawkins. He's a firebrand. Personally, I happen to get along with him. Doesn't mean I agree with him or anything, right? I mean, I don't have to agree with him on much. I haven't agreed with Silverman on a lot of things, but you don't isolate those kind of people from discussions if they're willing to have the discussion on those levels. Those are people you want to have discussions with because you maybe can change their minds. I know Silverman has changed his position on things. I know Kerry has changed his position on things. I know a lot of people that are more radicalized have changed their position on things. These things only happen when there's discussions. All right. And okay, so going back to Jenna. Jenna says, I'm surprised anyone on my page is surprised. See my pinned post at the top of my page. I'm making progress on myself finally with distance from those who fight to maintain and encourage abusive mindsets and behavior. Hence the reason for the name drop. Obviously, Jenna has some reasons. Now, I'm not privy to them. It's been a long time since I've talked to Jenna, but I do assume that Jenna has reasons for why they believe what they believe and what they're saying. So, it congeals with some of the other things we've heard from Notes from Autumn, from Eric Murphy, and from V, and from other people that have left, that were organized with Talk Heathens and Objectively Dance organization and things of that nature. There's some people, in those circles that have had some issues with the ACA. And then so he says, I've watched Matt for a while now, and I agree that he's eager to slam people once he feels justified. Perhaps he can express a little more epistemic modesty. I love that comment. I even like that comment. I should change that to love. I more than like it. I love that comment. Because epistemic modesty is important. If you guys don't notice, when there's a subject that I know nothing about, I'm the first person to tell you, hey, look, I know jack all about this particular topic. I don't understand it. I don't even have a basic level. I'm happy to say there are certain subjects I am completely inept upon. Not a big deal. Everybody's inept in certain topics. I guarantee it. Give me a saxophone. I'm inept. I have no idea how to play the saxophone. Give me a clarinet. I can play. I played clarinet in high school. But I couldn't. Just because I know how to play the clarinet, that doesn't translate over how to play the sax, right? So I'd consider to be inept when playing the sax. But I think, again, Matt has been jaded as he's been doing it for so long that he's lost all epistemic modesty because, he's always dominating the theist. He's like, I'm untouchable. I'm unbeatable. No theist can beat me. Yeah, because you have such high standard. Your standard is to demonstrate God. Yeah, that's kind of an unrealistic, position to have if you're going to have a conversation with somebody. I don't go into a conversation with a theist going, hey, look, you can't demonstrate God. We can't talk. That's stupid. But some of them have some interesting arguments. I mean, even right now, Rasmussen and Prouse wrote a book called Necessary Existence that I have a excerpted copy online that I found. And it's not an easy read, but it's definitely something that even atheists that I know are looking at is going, wow, this, it doesn't convince me God exists, but it's sure above the Darth Dawkins of the world. These are published works, some of these based on papers that are actually published in journals. And so, just because you have published a paper, it doesn't mean that you proved God, but it has definitely added to the literature of why an opinion that God more may exist, right? Those are what those papers are about. They're not demonstrating God exists. They don't say we conclude God exists. Here's the conclusive, deductive proof. No, they're not doing that. But they make very strong arguments, to them, very strong arguments, that there's a God, and they do so using actual philosophy and actual logic and modal logic and things of that nature for necessary being. And again, these have converted a lot of atheists over. There have been atheists that have become Muslim, polytheist, Christian because of these arguments. Now, again, these arguments aren't convincing to me, but they're not something you go around saying these are just crap arguments, right? They are converting people. Now, how do you sail that? You learn the arguments, you learn them in depth, and you try to figure out the holes in the arguments, which, might not be as big a gaping holes as people think. There might be very small ways to attack it. But if you don't know the counter arguments, how do you even get that far? Now, again, I'm not at that level yet. The Prouse's and Rasmussen's arguments are very, very, very deep. The book is very, very deep as far as, having necessarily this being that must exist. But, it doesn't, not saying it's not the case, right? I mean, there's only so many options, right? I mean, yes, God exists or God does not exist, but as it does exist, is it necessary? Is it contingent? There's not a lot of options there. And if God does exist, it's generally understood that there would be a contingent being. So if they can say, oh, look, there has to be metaphysically a necessary being. That's the first step on that ladder to theism. Right? I mean, if you accept God as a necessary being. Now, again, I know that Swinburne and Dr. Sawaji, they really actually have more of a contingent view of God, but it's a very, very complicated contingent version of God. But I think they would both argue that God does not have to exist in all possible worlds, but he's necessary in this world. Again, it's from what I understand, the way they're using modal logic is a little bit different, but whatever. But again, at least having a basic understanding of modal logic, necessary generally means that you have to exist in all possible worlds. It cannot fail to exist. So even in necessary in this particular world, God could not fail to exist in this particular world according to what their arguments are. And then they argue that look, that there has to be some kind of necessary being, whether that being has intentionality or not is further down the line in the argumentation. But they argue that there has to be something necessary. And I mean, it's kind of hard to even wrap your head around what would be the case if it wasn't necessary. This is why brute fact is just a brute fact, because we don't have the epistemic abilities to understand it. But what would be nothing? Like absolute nothing. Like literally absolutely nothing. It's hard to understand what that would actually mean. No Higgs field, no 0 point energy, no particles, literally philosophically nothing. And so, one argument is, okay, there's always been something, and that something is necessary. One is no more shocking to the conscience than the other, right? Both of them are nearly impossible to apprehend, given our finite consciousness, given our finite mind. Both, all three options: infinite regress, brute fact, which is contingencies that come out of that, or some kind of necessary being. All three of them are very difficult, if not impossible, for the finite mind to understand. So, you can't just dismiss one or the other arbitrarily. Now, I do dismiss infinite regress more than the rest, only because I do think the Grim Reaper paradox is a pretty good argument, and I don't believe in actual affinities. I think there's some good arguments against actual affinities. So even if we're talking about past regression, I think there's a termination point. I think that, with the Big Bang, the prior to that, anything that existed would be not related to the space-time that we understand as now. So, but even then, you have an infinite regress of some kind of multiverse, but that would require something necessary. Right. So even with infinite regress, there still has to be something necessary, like the multiverse, to exist for to have that infinite regress. And so something existing for eternity, one way, then, theists can say, look, well, we have past regression that has an infinite, infinity. Well, why can't you have a positive infinity as well? And we'll call that heaven. But then again, it gets in the whole, well, what's it like in heaven? I mean, what happens to people when they die, when they're babies? Or they go to heaven and they're like, still an infinite? I mean, do they have, what kind of life experiences do they have? There's a lot of questions involved with that. And I doubt that's the case, but they have a lot of work to get to that belief, right? But at least starting with the foundation that God's necessary and arguing for it, those are the conversations at the high level atheists and theists are having. These are the conversations that the Cameron Pertuzzi's, of the world bring in, people like Alex Malpass and William Craig, and you have Rasmussen, and you have Randall, and you have, these people that really do talk about these issues on a very complicated level. You don't see those people calling in the atheistic experience. One, you couldn't ever be able to explain those things on a phone call to somebody like Matt Dillahunty. It was not going to happen. And Matt's not at that level. I'm not at that level either. Don't think for a second that I'm claiming to be. But Matt is not wanting those high level dialogues, and I get that, I really do. But but they're not going to get the people that call in with the high level dialogues. They don't have to worry about that. They're going to call in with somebody who says, John did this, or Peter this says this, therefore atheism is bad. I'm sorry, it doesn't really take much to out argue somebody like that. And I see Craig Reed out there, and Craig Reed, well, I'm sure he'll agree with everything I'm saying. He's a theist. And I don't think I'm saying anything controversial to theism. I don't think any theist should say that I'm saying anything controversial. I'm not. I don't think any atheist should say anything that I'm saying anything controversial, because I'm not. Van Veen says, I suggest you reach out to Chris Langen. He has a channel called CTMU Radio. He became well known for having one of the highest IQs in the world and has an interest in God theory. Okay, I'll check that out. Chris Langen. Hal Anderson says everything's clear now. You clear over sax. Yeah, my best friend played sax I play clarinet. Not that I wouldn't learn. I think sax is a cool instrument, man. I happen to like jazz, fusion jazz, not all forms of jazz. Just I used to listen to a group called Spyra Gyra back in the day, if you remember that, when I wanted some jazz. But anyways, going back to this. This guy made a good point here. He says, it's simple. Watch an episode from 7 to 10 years ago and then watch a recent episode. The change in attitude slaps you in the face. I'm not saying people shouldn't change, but having a shorter and shorter fuse as you age is just annoying to listen to. Well, yeah, because again, he's heard these things a million freaking times, right? I mean, how many times can you tell somebody, I don't believe you? You know, I mean, it's just... It gets old really quick and then hangs up on them. And people go, yay, he defeated the big bad theist. He like I said, I've never heard Matt dismantle some kind of high theist argument, right? When it comes to like the necessary beings and things of that nature and the modal ontological argument. I don't think he's ever addressed the modal ontological argument. He's addressed the ontological argument. He's addressed the kalam a lot. But I mean, as far as like the stuff using logic, and I'm not saying Matt doesn't have an understanding of logic. I think Matt has a basic understanding of logic. I think that he recognizes enough logic to go, hey, yeah, I'm not gonna argue against Steve's logic because it's right. I still have nobody's successfully shown my logic to be wrong, but I mean, for my arguments, I mean, I'm not saying that everything I write is logical, but I'm saying my WASP and my ASM argument. But Outdone says, not only that, but the short fuse is a gimmick that gets views. Yeah, it's gimmicky. Yeah, I agree with you, right? Because people tune in. Oh, let's see, Matt destroy the big bad atheist or the big bad theist. But again, it gets old. It gets old. I haven't watched the show in ages. The only time people even send me anything on the ACA is if it has to do with agnosticism or something along those lines, or you tell somebody they're wrong when they're not, And so I tell this guy, I say, absolutely, hell, I will even say that I enjoyed some of the ASP episodes about a decade ago. Then the ACA got too wrapped up with their own egos rather than what their goals were. They also lost all sense of rationalism and logical reasoning when having to up their game when more advanced apologists would try to have discussions with them. Their base level rhetoric didn't work out too well against those who actually learned about atheology or philosophy. Many atheists became disillusioned by them over time. I do a show called Theological A-Holes. It is in your face about atheism, but from a philosophical level. And atheists, I think, are learning more about atheism from me than they ever did from AXP. Again, maybe a little hyperbolic, but again, I don't think I'm talking about atheism. They just don't talk about atheism. They talk about, I don't believe you. They talk about the Bible and things of that nature, which I don't know crap about. But I mean, as far as like the arguments for atheism, I don't see them talk about them very much. And I certainly, they don't go out of their way very often to say that, hey, there are no gods. Let me tell you why. Matt years ago had said, yeah, he is a positive atheist and he believes there are no gods, but he only said that very, very few times in the atheist experience. And then as time progressed, he walked back from that. And he's just like, oh, I just don't believe, which I'm like, that's dishonest. Look, we all know Matt believes there are no gods. Okay. So to take a lowering position, a lesser position of like retreating into agnosticism, but calling it atheism, that's just intellectually dishonest. As when did any host of the XP ever cite any atheist papers or atheist philosopher? When did they ever mention Draper, McCormick, Oppie, Mackey, or even Flew? Very rarely, if ever. I don't hear them mention any of these people. And then Jen says, to be fair, educating atheists about and this was a host of the ACA, the Atheist Experience, sorry. To be fair, educating atheists about atheism was not the point of the show. It was originally conceived as outreach to theists as a way to dispel some of the misconceptions about atheists. Fair enough. It devolved into a shit show after we started streaming live. I'm not going to argue that. Every atheist 4chan denizen was trying to call in to hear himself on the show. Agreed. Once we started limiting atheist calls, the jackasses started pretending to be theists to get on. And of course, the shitheads managed to misrepresent that too. The atheist circle jerk is boring as F. Jen, I happen to agree with her on that. I do. I don't think Jen said anything wrong there. I think Jen's spot on. And I said, hi, Jen, it was the atheist experience and I said, it was the atheist experience. experience is the key word, which was, according to their own mission statement, to promote positive atheism, meaning to normalize atheism in a favorable light, which again is confusing because people still don't understand when the ACA said positive atheism, they're not talking about positive atheism like you read in the literature, which is, again, I don't think they did that deliberately. I'm not going to go out of the way to say they did that deliberately. And they're allowed to do that. There's nothing wrong with that. Words can be used different ways. And I don't have a problem with them calling that positive atheism. But the problem is that in the literature, there's something called positive atheism. And that means the belief that God does not exist. And so it's confusing because in the literature it's called friendly atheism. I take that back. Friendly atheism is not the same as the other way of using it. Friendly atheism is a position that they're not against the concept of religion or gods. They're not saying we should abolish religion. It's friendly to the theist position, right? But this whole, we're just trying to make atheism normalized and we're trying to put it in a better light. Okay, great. All for that. They're calling that positive atheism. I'm fine with that too. And they have made this distinction. So I don't have an issue with that. They have pointed out that their positive atheism is different than what you find in the literature. And they've noted that. I'm okay with that. It's confusing, but as long as they made it very clear that they're not the same things, perfectly fine to do. I think a lot of us do the same things to some degree and say, hey, it's usually we're used this way, but we're using it this way to convey something. Okay, fine. No big deal. If they were to promote positive atheism, that seems to me it would imply educating atheists about atheism to try to make it into a more favorable light, right? It may have also started out as an outreach to theists, but over time, all the more informed theists stopped calling the show outright. What was left was really the most bottom of the barrel theist like Dart Dawkins and his ilk. And it became a trope that the show was just watching Matt hang up on people. Yeah. How many times over a decade can one ask theists, can you prove your God exists? Or say, I don't believe you, but I will give you that the taped cable shows were vastly more entertaining to me and more than the ones with you and Tracy Harris, which were much more greater attempt at a dialogue than a dumpster fire. I 100% agree that limiting calls just to theists was a really silly mistake. My call-in show about atheism prefers atheists to call in, but it's open to all. And Jen replied, that's the mangling of the ACA mission statement some folks did about a decade ago. The actual statement was promote positive atheist culture. It wasn't the mission statement of the show. I didn't say we limited calls to just theists. The call screeners just reserved a few lines to theists, but I agree that theist callers weren't exactly top shelf. Yeah, and that's the problem, right? I mean, so Matt's been playing softball for a very long time. Matt has not had to talk to the hardball high-level people for quite some time because he usually gets trounced. I know Aaron certainly does. Anytime you see Aaron talk to a high-level philosopher, he has done exceptionally poor. Every single solitary time I've seen it. I mean, abysmally. And we know Matt can debate. Matt's a hell of a debater. Look, I will give Matt credit. His debate with Side 10 was absolutely magnificent. It was brilliant. I liked it. It was entertaining. It was informative. I think he had some great comebacks and snaps and great counter arguments to Sai. And again, people know I get along with Sai. I consider him an online quote friend acquaintance kind of guy. We don't have issues with each other. I think he really does believe what he believes. I don't think he's putting on a front. I certainly don't agree with him, and I know he knows I'm formidable on some of these topics because I've given him some questions that he's had to ponder to answer, and he's not so quick to give me sophistry. I've noticed, right? For other people, he'll just be sophistic. He does it for a reason. He likes to be very, very antagonistic to the atheist, right? But he doesn't play that game with me because over the past years I've shut him down on those things, and he knows I can ask him very provocative questions. But in the debate that Matt Dillahunty had with him, Matt was great on it. But of course, Matt prepared for that debate. Matt talked to people that were in the know. Matt talked to people that knew philosophy. Matt had prep for that particular debate. And it showed. It absolutely showed. By the way, did you guys watch that debate? Have you guys seen the debate with Matt and Sai? What'd you think of it? But anyways, here, I want to keep this under 90 minutes because I kind of want to keep this digestible. And so I'm not going to keep this open much longer. But I just wanted to give you guys an overview of some of the things that I've just been seeing recently with the ACA. And I'm sure going to have the sycophants come over. Steve, why are you dogging on Matt Dillahunty again? Look, I'm not. I don't care. I'm not trying to dog on the dude. The guy has recused himself in these conversations ages ago, right? There's nothing about the name anymore that means anything. I get just as many views if I talk about whatever than I do Matt Dillahunty. I don't care. but I do have an issue with the ACA going the directions that they do, and kind of concerned again for who they host. I think they host very, 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 very shitty co-hosts that don't deserve to have a platform, that are morally reprehensible people. They support people that have demonstrated themselves to be bad people, and so I can see why people like Jenna and Jen and Tracy and other people probably have the same mindset. Now, again, it's not made for the exact same reasons, right? I don't know what their positions on with some of the other co-hosts of the Atheist Experience and related shows, but I do know that they have had a lot of infighting and a lot of schisms. I think the way that the ACA treats people are crap. I know for a fact that certain people with Talk Heathens were treated well. I'm going to walk that back. I'm going to walk it back. I'm going to keep to my own standards. I can't say it's a fact because it's subjective, even though there are subjective facts, but I'm going to walk it back. It's not a fact. I know from my experience that there have been certain people in the atheist community that from the ACA that were treated like crap and then kicked away, and so, the people the Talk Heathens and the Objectively Dan's and things of that nature. Yeah, I think they were treated very poorly. And again, I don't know if Objectively Dan himself was treated poorly, but some people related to that show, I think, were. But definitely with Talk Heathens. And I feel bad for them because I happen to like Eric Murphy. He's a nice guy, very, very nice guy. And why he may not stick up for himself, I don't think the way he was treated was proper. So, but anyways, you guys got any quick questions before I wrap it up? I got 5 minutes before I end this at the 90-minute mark, even though I was a few minutes late. But I'm going to try to keep it under 90 minutes. So let me know now what you think. Let me know in the comment section what you think of the gun control things as well. Again, I just had a personal issue with that particular news thing that I read, and that's why I wanted to talk about it. And I really hope that Jen is not mad at me for doing this episode. And I said at the very bottom I'm going to do it, but it's public, right? I mean, this is public stuff, so it's not like this is not a private page or anything like that. I'm not like invading Jenna's privacy. I'm just, doing a review on it because, again, these are the things I do talk about, especially when it comes to Matt, because Matt has had a lot of crap with people making these allegations of not being treated well, and I wasn't treated well by Matt, so I empathize with that. When Matt supported Kyle, I lost any respect I had for the guy. I mean, we all know Kyle was a domestic abuser. This is unequivocal. This is evidential. This is objective reality here, right? And anybody who defends him otherwise, I'm just shocked. I'm shocked, and I'm like, how can you defend somebody like this? But of course, I recognize Matt probably didn't know that at the time, right? I'm going to put this out there. I don't think Matt obviously recognized at that time, but there were allegations out there of him lying and making false allegations and falsifying things. And instead of Matt wanting to know the facts, he just tribalistically sided with Kyle and said, oh yeah, you know what? Your ex-boyfriend must be drunk. It must be the word of a drunk ex. Good luck. Thank you. Good. You've told Kyle, congratulations on your win. Hey, Matt, Kyle lost. And, he was propped up by people like you, Matt. He was propped up by people of the ACA that made his head explode and gave him this, the narcissistic supply that he got from that to take over everything and steal the money, right? I blame the ACA for that. I absolutely think that they are morally at least culpable for that. Not financially or anything like that. This is a moral issue. But I definitely think that them influencing Kyle fed into his narcissism and his egotism. And the true Kyle came out because, he was willing to submit altered evidence to the court. This is, again, unarguable. He was willing to do that, which means that was part of his, ethics all along. He didn't all of a sudden just, wake up and say, oh, I'm going to do something really, really unethical. No, he had that ability all along. We already knew that he, broke into a church and some other, morally, questionable things, dealing with, stealing and drugs and things of that nature and borrow money and not giving back. And by that, it has nothing to do with sexuality. Don't anybody even go there. When I say moral things, I don't give a shit that he was gay. That being gay is not an immoral act. Okay, it just is not. Having sex before marriage is not an immoral act. Having sex with children, immoral, right? Because there's even without laws, there's immorality to be had there. There's very questionable morality for that. You don't need a law for that to say that's immoral. But as far as like consenting adults, do what the hell you want. Okay, you guys are talking about zero. Oh, that's an interesting discussion. Probably for another time. What zero is really about, because zero and a null set are not the same thing. Zero and a null set are not the same thing. So Highlander says, reminds me of Tracy Harris' ACA show about nothing. It's not a thing. It's an idea of like infinity. And that might be the case. Again, we cannot really apprehend nothing. There's a concept we can kind of conceptualize maybe, but it's not the same as zero. And it's not even the same thing as an empty set, because we're dealing with properties in a set. The set F, F usually deals with properties. If you have an empty set where there's no properties, sure, there's nothing, there's no properties, but philosophical nothing is at a whole next level. You know, it's at a whole nother level to say, look, there is literally nothing. No ideas, no potentiality, no actuality, no quantum foam, no fields, no particles. There is not even a void. There's nothing. We're not designed by nature to apprehend those things. We can't. Our brains are too limited. We don't have the computational power to really understand any of those things. So we do the best we can by explaining it in a very dumbed down version, right? So, all right, well, guys, like I said, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you guys for watching this. Let me know what you guys think in the video description, or the video comments. Please share these videos. I am doing a lot more just reviews, philosophical stuff on this channel. I'm continuing the Non Sequitur show with a guest. I'm pretty well booked till May for the most part. I got all these different things lined up, and people give me great feedback, by the way, and I appreciate it. No one episode defines the channel. It is all over the place, and I get that, and there's reasons for that. I'm trying out different things, so don't watch one thing and go, oh, it's going to be like this. No, there's all kinds of stuff coming up from one extreme to the other. But I got to tell you, I have been enjoying it a lot more than I used to. The show with Ashley from the Clergy Project, I thought was fantastic. She was a wonderful guest. The one I had with Cindy Lincoln, great. Even talking about CPUs, even though my layout sucked, and I get that, but the conversation was amazing. Talking about old school CPUs and stuff like that. Finding out that some people actually had educations in that area that they're like this is my jam. I think it was Highlando, actually, if I'm not mistaken. That was his jam. But again, this is what we're going to be doing, and I'm going to have fun doing it. So I appreciate all the people that have supported me on that, and the people that have become members of the channel. I see Highlando, a member. I got my mods out there, like Heat Shield, Flamo, who donates, and Maki, who's been around for a long time, and I appreciate it. I really, really do. Don't think for a second that I don't, especially with all the BS that goes out there. I'm just whatever. I don't deal with any of that anymore. Because see, I'm happier. I really am happier not having to deal with other people. I get to do what I want, when I want, with whom I want. And I don't give a crap what anybody says. Make 1,000 videos about me out there. All this week there's been videos about me, and people have told me, I'm like, I don't know. I haven't watched any of them. I don't give a shit. I don't follow any of those channels. Jim says, last Non Sequitur show was great. Thank you, Jim Jules. You're not going to charge me $50,000 from promotional, are you? Yeah, don't do that. But I will, you know what, Orlando, especially if you want to join us, that'd be great. I'll have an episode on zero and infinity, just talking about set theory and von Neumann ordinals and things of that nature, with a mathematician if I could find one, to talk about how we build up things from Peano's axioms and say, okay, in set theory 1 + 1 = 2. Here's a simple proof of it, and here's a longer proof of it. But it's based upon, if I'm not mistaken, von Neumann ordinals, where you start with an empty set and then you move from there and build from there. But you start to get into things like alpha, null, and cardinalities, and the cardinalities of the real set as opposed to other sets out there, and what does it mean to have a cardinality? What does it mean to have an infinite set as opposed to like a higher order infinite? That when I learned about higher order, higher degrees of infinity, when these are cardinalities, I lost my mind. I'm like, dude, I need to be tripping on this, because this is some serious stuff, learning about Cantor's diagonal proof and all that. Never got good at it. Very, very superficial understanding. But just even having a superficial understanding blows your mind, right? But anyways, guys, thanks for watching this. I'm going to wrap it up. Please leave me a comment in the comment section. If everybody watches, leave one comment. I appreciate that. I like reading the comments, so I like to hear what you guys' feedback is. And with that, I'll bid you guys good night. I don't think I'm streaming this weekend. If I do, I'll do an A-Holy Atheist program on Sunday, maybe. But I definitely have Non Sequitur show on Monday with Edgar on Intelligent Design. So I'm putting out a lot of shows in a week. I mean, more than I kind of wanted to do. But it's fun. It's fun. If no other thing, I'm entertained. If I'm entertained, hopefully you guys will be. And that's all that matters. So good night.